All right. May we? Thank you. All right. Good afternoon. All right, not too much today. Good afternoon. Security Council, as you know, held an open debate and then consultations this morning on Yemen. Briefing Council members by video conference, the Secretary General Special Envoy Martin Griffiths said that the situation on the ground in Yemen is changing with great pace and that we need to seize the opportunities for progress. He provided an update on the implementation of the Stockholm and Hudaydah Agreements. Regarding the situation in Aden and Abyan, the Special Envoy said that a continuation of this current situation is simply untenable, warning of great risk and further damage to Yemen's social fabric and the spread of violence to the southern governorates. He stressed that the UN remains committed to inclusive dialogue to resolve differences and address the legitimate concerns of all Yemenis. Also briefing the Council was Ursula Mueller, Assistant Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs. She said that we urgently need de-escalation across Yemen, ideally through a nationwide ceasefire that will end the violence. But a ceasefire or not, she stressed that all parties must uphold international humanitarian law. All feasible steps must be taken to avoid harm to civilians and civilian infrastructure. This includes verifying targets, taking precautions in the choice of weapons, and canceling an attack if it is expected to cause disproportionate civilian harm. This afternoon at 3 o'clock, the Polish presidency has organized an open debate on the situation in the Middle East in the Security Council. The chef de cabinet, Maria Luisa Viotti, will be representing the Secretary General and delivering her remarks. The permanent representative of Israel, Danny Danon, has advised us that he will be at the stakeout at 2:50 p.m., just before the start of the meeting at 3 o'clock. And we've also been told that the U.S. Secretary of State, Michael Pompeo, who will be accompanied by the Polish foreign minister, will speak to you at the stakeout at approximately 6:10. And as a reminder, the Secretary General is expected to meet with the U.S. Secretary of State at approximately 6:50 p.m. tonight. On Libya, our humanitarian colleagues tell us that at least 90 civilians have been killed and more than 200 injured since hostilities escalated earlier this month in and around the town of Morzuk in the country's southwest. This figure includes some 45 people killed in an airstrike on August 4th and the death or injury of 6 children on the 8th of August after a mortar landed on a house hosting internally displaced people. Casualties on all sides of the fighting have continued as a result of airstrikes by planes and drones, indiscriminate rocket attacks and shelling, and direct fighting on the ground. Although nearly 10,000 people have been displaced by violence in the area since the start of August, some families are reluctant to leave the affected areas because they're afraid of reprisals. The UN and humanitarian organizations are responding with emergency health care, food distribution, shelter, and non-food items, but access remains difficult due to the active fighting. We call on all parties to the fighting to urgently ensure the conditions for safe, unimpeded access to people in need and to make sure that civilians can leave if they wish. We also remind the parties of their obligations to protect civilians and civilian infrastructure at all times. The humanitarian response plan for Libya has called for $202 million, but has only been funded 30% so far. And from Geneva, the Special Envoy for Syria, Geir Peterson, has had a productive meeting with the Chinese envoy for Syria, Mr. Xi. They shared similar concerns about the humanitarian issues and the situation on the ground. They reviewed the progress on the constitutional committees in line with Security Council Resolution 2254. Mr. Peterson said he was grateful for the support of China. He also noted that moving forward with the composition and rules of the procedures were among his priorities and hoped the work could be completed soon. The Special Envoy is also very concerned about the continuing fighting in Idlib and stressed that there is no military solution to this conflict. And the Director General of the International Organization for Migration, Antonio Victorino, is in Mozambique today to meet with authorities to support the humanitarian response to cyclones Idai and Kenneth. He was also in Beira, where the Secretary General went earlier this summer, and he said there were still urgent humanitarian needs to meet, especially with regards to food, shelter, and livelihood. as 500,000 people continue to live in destroyed or damaged homes in the country. Vitorino reiterated IOM's commitment to support the people of Mozambique. And today, in a video message, the Secretary General congratulated the young people that have won a green ticket to attend the Youth Climate Summit on 21st September here at headquarters. The Youth Summit is a platform for young leaders who are driving climate action to showcase their solutions at the UN and to meaningfully engage with decision makers on the defining issue of our time. The Secretary General also appealed to youth around the world to follow the summit online and to be drivers of climate action in their own countries. 100 green tickets were given out. They consist of fully funded, carbon-neutral travel to New York to enable youth from all walks of life to attend the summit. More than 7,000 applications were received. More information can be found on the UN's Youth Summit Envoy's website. And after a long dry spell, I'm very happy to be able to thank Japan for its full contributions to the 2019 budget. Japan's payment takes us to a total of 111 fully paid member states. Arigatou gozaimashita. How's that? Ask in English, not in Japanese, please.
No,
Go ahead, Majid.
Next time. About Yemen, Stéphane, we all hear Mr. Griffiths' report. The situation is changing on the ground dramatically, especially around Aden. Given Secretary General's role in Stockholm Agreement, does he think there should be a broader agreement in Yemen that includes a nationwide, all these parties coming together? And my second question with regard to that is, will he discuss the situation in Yemen with Secretary Pompeo tonight?
So we'll have to see what issues the Secretary of State brings up, as they've asked for the meeting. We're ready to discuss a wide range of issues, including Yemen, of course. Mr. Griffiths, with the full support and backing of the Secretary General, is in the driver's seat on Yemen, on trying to reach a political agreement. There were small steps that have taken, like you mentioned, Hudaydah being one of them. I think what is important is that all the parties directly involved and those who have influence over the parties involved put the interests of the Yemeni people first and foremost, and that means cessation to the fighting, a halt to the violence, a halt to the suffering of the Yemeni people, so we can at least, at a bare minimum, quickly access the humanitarian aid that's needed. Yes, Evelyn.
Thank you, Stéphane. On Yemen, the Yemeni ambassador spent as much time condemning the UAE in Aden as it did the Houthis for their general position. Is that the new UN line, too, the criticism?
No, listen, I speak, or at least try to speak, for the Secretary General. I cannot speak for the member states who are themselves delivering statements. The Secretary General's views are clearly reflected in what Mr. Griffiths said.
But they are, quote, the legitimate government, no? And secondly, Cameroon, the leader of the Anglophone in the north, has been sentenced to life. Do you have anything further on that?
No, I should have something, but I don't have anything today for you. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you. Stéphane, as we talk, actually, in about 15 minutes, Mr. Pompeo, Secretary of the State, will meet Mr. Vučić, President of Serbia, and the expectations are that they are going to talk about Kosovo. Now, I'm not going to ask you for the Secretary General to comment that bilateral meeting, but since the Secretary General is in his report on Kosovo for continuation of dialogue, and since there is a stalemate of the dialogue between Pristina and Belgrade, would the Secretary General like at this very moment to address that issue of dialogue and what he has to say?
We obviously stand firmly for dialogue and as a way to move the process forward. What I know about the bilateral meeting is what you know. I read it in their press advisory. But obviously, I think any dialogue amongst the parties, or the parties have influence over others, is important.
Is that a recommendation?
It's a fact that dialogue is good. Yes, Mr.
Will the Secretary General meet President Vucic?
I do not see him on his schedule for this week. Mr. Abadi, and then we'll go.
Thank you, Stéphane. Is the Secretary General concerned about the territorial integrity of Yemen?
I think the Secretary General stands firmly for the territorial integrity of Yemen, and I think we've expressed our concerns about the developments in Aden very clearly. Yes, ma'am.
Issue that it was just asked. The U.S. representative to the UN, Ambassador Cohen, recommended in the Security Council meeting last time in June that the Secretariat have to carry out a review on UNMIK and with a perspective to exit from Kosovo. Is anything in this regarding? Has Secretariat done everything in the issue?
I will check. My understanding is that there may be a strategic review being done of the mission, but let me check and get back to you.
With the perspective to carry
the mandate of the mission is one given to it by the Security Council, so that would be up to the Security Council. Yes.
Thank you, Stéphane. There's been a nuclear accident in Russia, as you may have read the reports, and we've seen a spike in radiation levels. Now we see that 4 monitoring stations in Russia are switched off, probably to cover up what's going on. Does the UN know what happened there, and is the SG concerned about it?
No, we don't. We don't have any information from the Secretariat standpoint. The part of the UN system that deals with this is the CTBTO, and I think it's important that all member states cooperate with them in as much as possible. Mayor
But
Carmen.
is he aware of the reports?
Yes, we've all seen. We've seen the reports and the press reports. Yeah.
Thank you. Is the Secretary General aware of the fire in Gran Canaria? It's ravaging the island and also the ecosystem. Has Spain asked for any help? Do you know?
No, I'm not aware that Spain has asked for any help from the UN. I think the Spanish national emergency authorities are very well equipped in these issues. They have long experience. We're obviously aware of the fire and are concerned for, obviously, the degradation of their natural habitat and the threat that it may cause to peoples and property. Go ahead. You have a second one.
Another fire question has to do with Hezbollah is now using fire to attack Israel from the north, sending incendiary devices into the north of Israel. Is the SG aware of this?
Let me check with our colleagues at UNIFIL to see if we have any reports on that. Yes,
I have a question. I'm coming back to Kosovo. It seems that the UN is working on Kosovo with UNMIK and a country team, one country team. What's the difference between two of them?
Well, in most places there is a mission with a mandate from the Security Council, right? And then a country team is there to look more at the development issues, but they all work very much as one. Errol, staying in the Balkans today.
No. Just wondering.
I'm happy to travel anywhere, but go ahead.
We'll go soon. Just regarding these 100 green tickets, you said that it's fully funded carbon-free travel to New York. What I know, it's carbon-free travel. It's 400 euros more than the regular air travel from Europe.
Sorry?
What I know for carbon-free is that it's more expensive, like 400 euros, traveling from Europe. Now, what does it mean in few details, if you can explain?
Well, my understanding is that there'll be some carbon offsets purchased as part of the package.
So it's not like you're saying only to say that it's carbon-free, because it sounds very fashionable and in trend. But it's really
if there's
like,
one thing I try to be is fashionable and trendy.
No, I'm very serious, because it's more expensive.
It is more expensive, which is very much unfortunate, which is part of the broader problem. And that's why one of the many reasons we're having the summit is also to find, to ensure that there can be a scale-up of less expensive technological green solutions.
And indeed, you look very fashionable without tie.
Thank you. Now, you are my fashion icon, Errol. Yeah.
It's a bit of a historical question again. Yesterday was the 66th anniversary of the coup of Mohammed Mossadegh. And I just asked the U.S. Special Representative for Iran about this. He denied the CIA's involvement. Has the Secretary General ever spoken about this? Does he have a position?
This current Secretary General, no. I have difficulty enough dealing with issues of the day that I try not to go back more than 10 years. But we can, you can look through the archives to see what was said or done, if anything was done at the time here. Thank you all. Enjoy the day. See you tomorrow, and Monica will be back tomorrow.